Well, Bruce and I are delighted to be here today. We're wondering why we were last.
Because our presentation's for 4 hours.
Well, really, Bruce, our original plan was to talk about Mount Evergreen, right? The ski club. But you know what? When we started doing the research, we found out we couldn't do it without sharing with you a little bit about how skiing started. You know, downhill or alpine skiing, Bruce, didn't start until, I think it was after ski jumping.
Go ahead.
No, I think it was somewhere around the 1930s that alpine skiing started in Canada, right?
It started then in Canada, but ski jumping came ahead of skiing in town. There was ski jumping on Coney Island it was called Blueberry Hill in the summer for Jan Lindstrom, but it's called Blueberry Mountain in the winter for the skiers. After a couple of years, because they couldn't access Coney Island because of ice conditions over Cameron Narrows, I think, it was moved to 7th Avenue South, or Gold Street at the time. And Gold Street at the end of 7th Avenue South was east of the Coke plant. They had some amazing jumps there at the time, and they were some of the biggest in the country, I believe. The jump started in 1926. You can see it there, Lynne.
Bruce, it's huge. Do you see those little people down there?
Yeah. Like it's, just imagine going off that jump in a pair of these things that you're strapped into. I mean, like if you wipe out, it's like right to the hospital. You know, there was.
You come barreling down that jump. Could you imagine what it'd be like trying to climb that jump?
Yeah, I don't know how you get to the top because there was no elevators or anything. But it blew over in 1927. That's the same year that my dad was born.
Is that why it blew over?
I imagine.
It was some big windstorm, I heard.
Yeah, I don't know why. Yeah.
So actually, it was really like 1938 that the Kenora Ski Club was first organized, and it was in 1939 under Judge Popham that the Kenora Ski Club was established at the Golf and Country Club. There were runs from beginner to advanced skiers. There was even a clubhouse, a ski tow. They had a fellow there by the name of Johnny Hansen, who was the instructor at the time.
In the 1940s, it was so popular. I imagine lots of people golf. The main fairway, the first fairway would be a pretty gentle run, and then as you would walk down the first fairway, the runs that ran in from the south side on your right going down number one, those were the more difficult runs, and they'd be definitely more difficult on a pair of skis like that.
I think that's why they were called suicide.
It became a visitor destination, so we even had ski trains arriving. That picture obviously isn't from here because there's some pretty big hills in the background, but I think we get the point that there was buses and or taxis that had ski racks. Hotels were opened, and I think some tourist camps even picked up a few of the skiers at the time. The first ski competition started about 1945 after World War II. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the start of the carnival in Kenora, too.
That's right. I think it was in conjunction with the very first Kenora Snow Carnival. All the ski clubs from Winnipeg and Thunder Bay, Lakehead as it was called back then, were all coming to Kenora for these competitions.
Prince Arthur.
That's Prince Arthur.
Well, we heard that earlier, too.
Oh, yeah. Well, here we go. And that's how the Johnny Hansen Memorial Trophy came into being. Here it is today. It was donated by the Snow Carnival Committee in 1946 in honor of Johnny Hansen. He died in World War II. He was a member of the Royal Air Force and was instrumental in the formation of the ski club. This trophy quickly became one of the most coveted trophies in the central Canadian ski zone. As a matter of fact, there was an article in 1947 that talked about the visiting tourists here. Can you imagine 1,000 visiting skiers? Not to mention the 200 local skiers, for a total of 1,200 skiers on the hills of the golf course. Bruce, that's more than we ever get at Mount Evergreen.
For the whole Christmas season. This is about the time that Art Hansen came along. He was Johnny's nephew. This is, I think, a primarily men's trophy, but there's a lot of Latin names on here.
Those are Latin men, yes.
Latin men.
Yeah. Women never made it.
Um, Art Hansen had a very smooth performance against a large field of skiers from Winnipeg and Thunder Bay. And at the time, his mom said that if he can get his name on Johnny's trophy, that he can quit skiing. And if you think about skiing on a pair of skis like this in 1947, I mean, it would be like, it was like a treacherous sport. You know, the leverage when you fall, you spiral fractures, and well, you're a ski patrol in. I mean, you can just imagine what it was like. But that wasn't the end of the ski hill. There was another ski hill in. And in 47, there was Hidden Valley, which I didn't know about until we got asked to do this talk. And it was north of the airport, and it would go down. That lake in the background is Black Sturgeon. And it was Nick and Mary's Ronnebeck had some property there.
They actually ran it.
Yeah.
I think it was owned by the Kenora Ski Club, and Nick and Mary ran the store.
Bill shoveled the road out to the airport to get the buses in. Mary made meals, pies. Probably didn't get them from Jackson's Bakery, but...
Nick did his best. Can you imagine shoveling all the way out to the airport road for those buses from Winnipeg to come down with those skiers?
Well, we're still doing it today. We still have volunteers plowing the road out to the highway.
We do.
Waiting for those buses to come in.
We're waiting. So really, like, wow, what a view. It was really something. I also heard they held many a ski race on these slopes. My mother often talks about what it was like being out there. There were some outstanding Kenora skiers, and names that come to mind are like Art Hansen that you mentioned, his wife Florence, the Wilf Simons, the Flemings, the Latanes, the Crane brothers. This picture here is actually a fellow from one of the Winnipeg ski clubs, I believe, from what Bill Ronnebeck told me. And it was Bill Ronnebeck who actually donated a few of these photos for the show today.
Well, I thought...
you thought it looked like you?
No, actually, my dad told me it was him, but I don't believe him.
Well, you know, actually, it was in 1956 that the Kenora Ski Club moved to its current location, where we currently know it as Mount Evergreen. Now, it wasn't Mount Evergreen yet, though. It was still called the Kenora Ski Club. And according to the newspaper, it was because it was bigger, it was closer to town, and we were hoping to encourage more skiers to come out. And it was actually in 1958 that the very first ski club was built, and it was located at the base of what we call our nursery slope today. Here you can see it with the club president at the time, Ken Kale, and he's presenting a trophy to an unknown skier. Now, skiing was really catching on, and it was about this time that Falcon Lake opened up, right, Bruce?
It was in the early 60s, and ski equipment was really changing. We had fiberglass skis, aluminum poles, better boots. These are Lynne's boots, obviously.
They're my brothers.
I didn't start skiing that early.
I'm slightly older.
But way better looking. Falcon Lake opened with a Canadian Olympic ski jump champion. An Olympic champion designed their hill, I believe, or
That's
had
right,
some,
he did. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was a Canadian ski jumper, with the Olympics, yeah.
Oh, one of those guys, yeah.
Yeah, one of those guys. They even had a rope tow and a chalet. They boasted a chalet with a fireplace. So, you know, the Kenora Ski Club executive, not to be outdone, decided advertising. They'd advertise ski classes. They were passing out circulars to the local schools, and they were offering free bus runs out to the hill. Lessons were free to members, and you know what the membership was back then? $5.
That's the price of a good order of fries out there, or probably poutine today.
Yeah, poutine today at the ski hill.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Did you know the ski hill almost ceased to exist, though? In 1962, a fire destroyed the clubhouse, and it was such a struggle with little finances available that the club didn't think they'd be able to rebuild. And as with any good club or organization, they had a lot of fantastic members that were willing to pull together in times of adversity, and they managed to open for the 1963 season. As a matter of fact, we have never lost a ski season.
We almost lost one this winter. It was so cold. This picture here is of the rope tow, and it was our favorite, Lynne, because it was so fast. And
you love rope tows.
Oh yeah, it was $5 to join for the season and $400 for a pair of mitts to keep going. But Peter Delmer had to, after we got rid of we got rid of the rope tow, and we put in a new T-bar, and that run where that rope tow is now is called Peter's Fancy, and I think Peter's
named
here today.
after Peter Delmer today.
Yes, he's here.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to get some more history on that one of these days. Go ahead, Lynn.
Well, actually, this was interesting because, that was about the time that Colin Miles came into play here, right, Bruce?
He put together the rope tow and maintained it and groomed the hills. I heard he did. His family was out there all the time. I didn't know him until later, but he was very instrumental in the early years of the club, right up till 1979.
So actually, it was by 1966 that the Kenora Ski Club was really seen as a tourism asset for Kenora, and the club was one of the first ones to realize this and to promote those outdoor winter pursuits. The ski club executive was advertising night skiing at the time to attract more members. And in this picture, you can see the hills lit up by the lights with the addition of some expert skiers carrying flares to show off the serpentine movement. Now, Bruce, look at those lines. That's poetry in motion.
That's time-lapse photography, Lynn. It was about this time that Gareth Nelson, a Bank of Nova Scotia bank manager, came down from Thompson with his family and his daughter, who had later married. He was busy in an active hill there, and he saw the potential of the Kenora Ski Club. He was instrumental in lobbying the government and financial corporations for loans and to help further develop facilities. And
despite the lobbying that he did, by 1967, there was still no funding in sight. So once again, the executive rallied its membership for donations, and added to this, Colin Miles stepped forward, gaining financial backing to be able to install a new T-bar system. This, along with the addition that we did to the lodge at the time, put Kenora Ski Club in the forefront of development.
Following the addition of the second T-bar and the renovations of the clubhouse in 1973-74 season, the membership grew to just under 500. In the 68 and 69 seasons, we had 6,000 skiers a year, which, if you consider the short season with very little snowmaking, it would be very busy. There's long lineups. Ski racing was very popular under the direction of your uncle, Don Latane. He was a national coach. And the Kenora Ski Hill continued to dominate in the Manitoba division with names like Janie Miles, Rick Sharples, the Cale brothers. I can remember watching Craig Cale ski. Wow. He was really something. It was about this time that the Nancy Green Ski League that was formed by Wilf Simons it was a kids ski league. It was named after Nancy Green, who won the gold medal in the giant slalom in Grenoble in 1968.
She's one of the most memorable women skiers of all time for Canada. So it was 1969 or thereabouts that the actual club became incorporated and finally known as what we know it today as Mount Evergreen. It took over the assets and the liabilities of the Kenora Ski Club, and then by becoming incorporated, it went under the municipality, and we were able to apply for grants and loans for the government. So by 1973, we finally were awarded a grant. It was an Arctic grant to build an addition to the ski club, add a ski shop, a second T-bar, and the much needed snowmaking equipment. Our membership had steadily grown, but our club was in desperate need of a larger facility to be able to house all the people that we had coming out at that time.
With the new ski shop on the horizon, Garth Nelson attended a ski mechanics workshop so we could offer the most up-to-date technical advice for the new safety equipment coming online, quick release bindings, plastic boots that were more supportive, better linings, warmer boots. He had complete sales and service and rentals at the hill.
He even had cross-country skis.
Yes, he did, yeah.
Look at the photo.
Oh, yes. Oh, this is my favorite one. This is Garth Nelson and a local skier who's still skiing by the name of Bobby Smith. And the third guy in the Adidas tracksuit, he looks like Jack Howard, but it's actually Guy Lafleur.
Actually, Bruce, that really is a Guy Lafleur. We know it really is.
Jack
Howard, who is still skiing today.
He's still skiing, yeah. And he's out there every day. He's an amazing athlete. Bobby and Jack also play a lot of tennis together.
So with the addition of that second T-bar, Bruce, it expanded our hill elevation, didn't it?
We were about 200, so I think we gained 50 feet on top of the smaller hill.
That was a long run,
Yes.
right from the top. So 1960, I guess it was 1978 actually, with a growing clientele, we finally hired our first club manager. It was Mike Lucan. He was instrumental in promoting the club facilities to the point where skiers from Manitoba were outnumbering our local skiers. So it was thought to keep those people coming to Kenora that we really needed a hill groomer, we needed better snowmaking equipment, and the ski club, along with a group of local hotels and businesses, with help from the Ontario Sunset Country Travel Association, Ministry of Industry and Tourism, and the Publicity Board of Kenora, that we hired a company that were able to put together some ski packages. These ski packages and brochures offered weekend rates at our local hotels for families. The response was so great that the weekend rates of occupancies for hotels rose from 30 to 80% in the winter months. And Mount Evergreen tripled its out-of-town lift ticket sales. Hundreds of people were flocking to Kenora by the busload, to Mount Evergreen in particular. And the lineups grew and grew. You can see the lineups. We don't have lineups like that today, Bruce.
No, it's good.
Must
and
be
bad.
because of those high-speed T-bars.
The 80s was the time of change. Skis became shorter, better construction, better boots, and some really colorful clothing. We're trying to keep up with the golf course, of course.
Those one-piece suits.
Oh, one-piece suits, yeah, they're warm. By that time, by the mid-'80s, about 2 million Canadians were downhill skiers and actively had equipment.
Can you imagine 2 million Canadians owning alpine equipment by this time? That's quite something. Well, we have to mention a few people who become the pillars of clubs and organizations. And ours, like many of yours out there, we have a few notables. Colin Miles. He first became involved in the club when one of the very first rope tows at Mount Evergreen was installed. And we mentioned previously about him financing that very first T-bar. As a matter of fact, that T-bar is still in existence today, and it's called the Colin Miles T-bar. He was the president of Hook Separation Lake Camps on the English River system, and he was able to utilize his camp employees for the winter season and thereby keep them gainfully employed year-round. There was many a day that Colin spent at the hill behind the scenes getting things ready for a winter of skiing. According to his family, he'd be out there grooming Christmas Eve if there was a fresh snowfall. Frank and Joyce Simons were two other people that I think of. They worked at the club for many years. Initially, they did it as not-for-profit, but when the club undertook its major expansion there in centennial year 1967, Mr. Simons started operating the little place downstairs for ski rentals and skis.
Shop, yeah.
And then Mrs. Simons operated the concession on the main floor, and jointly they managed the club and the buildings and collected tow fees, and they provided a lot of caretaking services. They also were a presence at the hill. They had a trailer that was out there, and they lived out there for more than 20 years. This is about the time that Frank took up cross-country skiing, and he had a ski trail that wound all the way around the hill at Mount Evergreen. And he would be out there grooming that trail, tracking that trail, just him and his 2 wooden skis. I think the run now, Bruce, is noted as what, Red Fox?
That's right. It's Red
I
Fox.
finally got it right, eh? Not Red Spruce, it's Red Fox. As a matter of fact, Mount Evergreen hosts the Frank Simons Classic Cross-Country Ski Race annually, and it's in honor of Frank, and it's a very coveted trophy amongst the Nordic ski group.
Earl Latane is another founding member out there. There was a picture of him earlier teaching skiing back in the 60s. He was a life member. He was the organizer of the first ski patrol in the 1960s. But I think the Canadian ski patrol started in 1940, I think was the origin of it.
That's right, and he started our first one at the ski club in 1960.
He was club president many times over the years, and he was involved with the ski schools for over 30 years. And I remember your father really well.
So it was the 1990s, and in we came with snowboarding. 90s really brought about some big changes for Mount Evergreen. snowboarding was taking off, and about 97% of all ski areas in North America and Europe were embracing this new group. In 1994 is when the actual Canadian Association of Snowboarding Instructors was founded, and I think, Bruce, that's when we really had some big changes taking place in our ski world.
We can't forget cross-country skiing, Lynne. It's been steadily gaining popularity since Frank and his early days with his trailer on the hill. In the 1990s, the Jackrabbit League was formed for children aged 4 to 9, which is a real genesis of the group today. Strong partnerships were formed between the downhill group and cross-country. The trails were improved. And in the 2000s, the Kenora Nordic Trail Association became active again. I think they were active earlier. And they've been making a name for themselves. They've put in 20 kilometers of trails at the hill, about 8.5 or 9 kilometers of skate trails. You can see these two gentlemen, John Holler and Ralph Matthews, just coming in the other day. But the skate trail is for skate skiing, which is a trail 12 to 15 feet wide. There's 8.5 kilometers out there, and it's beautiful. I've been out there on those skate trails a lot, not on his skiing capacity.
Actually, I think they really made a name for themselves, both within the Manitoba and the Lake Superior Ski Division, didn't they? You know, for the trails that they've done, and it's the many volunteers and the coaching staff that have really placed our Nordic skiers well in the nationals.
But it's also because of the challenging terrain. We aren't skiing on a flat prairie. Mm-hmm. The strong Nordic kids have a little downhill background. They have it all there. It's really encompassing for their talents. It's most skiers are afraid to go downhill on a pair of cross-country skis. I don't blame them. They're just like those things. And but if you have kids that can go downhill and they can climb uphill, they have an advantage, definitely.
So, you know, it really is with our combined efforts that the two clubs have merged together under Mount Evergreen, and that's really what's made us a premier skiing area today.
Oh yeah, everything is offered. We're just a smaller version of a big mountain.
Well, let's still talk about the 90s. That was the start of freestyle skiing. We ended up with being approached by Len Blythe, ski club executive at the time, said to Len, go right ahead. You want to use these slopes for jumps and aerials? Let's go for it. So competitions were taking place in Thunder Bay, and again, Kenora skiers were demonstrating their talents and success and podium finishes for some of the events. So with freestyle skiing and snowboarding gaining momentum, it was about this time we saw the end of alpine racing as we know it today. And we went one step further and got into some extreme skiing business, I hear, Bruce.
Well, we had a group of young boys called the Treadways that have made a name for themselves internationally, by the way. Extreme skiing got big. They're in these wild movies. They jump off mountains and cliffs. And Dan, I think Dan's the oldest brother. He's broken more bones than we can ever imagine.
That's why he's called Big Air Dan.
Big Air Dan. And he has almost as many sport magazine covers as Michael Jordan. I think he's just a few shy of Michael Jordan.
Wow, that's something to say for a Kenora resident, isn't it? You know, it's amazing that people are born and raised in Kenora and can develop a passion for skiing, because you're really limited to some rocky, flat kind of terrain of central Canada. So for many a youth, Bruce, Mount Evergreen's been the place to be. In the 2000s, the ski industry was once again changing. Skis were becoming wider. Twin tips were all the rage. And a terrain park was being developed so that youth could be found riding the rails. They could be fine-tuning those back scratchers and those helicopters and those 720s. I don't do any of them. Bruce does some, I think. Bruce is the one who's out there snow sculpting those tabletops. He's the one on the groomer, and he's the one developing a lot of these jumps for his sons and for those other people's sons that are out there.
We had a bunch of renovations happen. We had a large grant that started in about 2005. We got better grooming. In 2007, we got a large grant, a $500,000 grant for about $1 million project. We improved snowmaking. We dug about a 2-acre pond. Doug Lafney wanted the sand, and we wanted the hole. So it was a really, really good partnership.
It was a real good partnership.
We put a lot of pipe in the ground. There's about a mile of air and water pipe out of the hill buried.
I
underground for
actually heard
snowmaking.
it was 213 pieces of pipe that took an hour to weld each piece.
Yes. it
So you
was,
can imagine the underground system that they had to make snowmaking. So snowmaking is very important for us so that our season can start a little bit earlier. And you can see the picture here of our snowmaking equipment. It's a lot of memories and a lot of people and a lot of partnerships that go into making a hill successful, eh, Bruce?
And we put a magic carpet in too. And the magic carpet is just a big conveyor belt that you see at Safeway, but there's no groceries on it. It's kids. We started this little area. I think it's got a 14-degree slope or something very small. And young kids or anybody learning to ski just walks up to it, and you just glide up the hill. It's just a 18-inch wide rubber belt to take you up to this hill, and it's all enclosed, and it's actually called the Rotary Train Park. The Rotary Club in town gave us some money for it. Trillium bought the magic carpet, and the landscaping was done by us. There's a building there, and it's our sort of learn to ski area. And we installed it, and I looked at it, and I thought, oh, this is going to be neat, but it's so embraced by little kids.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also the launching pad for all the cross-country skiers, the Jackrabbit program. They go on the magic carpet, and they come out at the top, they go down the hill, and they turn into downhill skiers.
Bruce, let's not forget our volunteers, right? They're the mainstay of any club or organization, and as the years go by and families move or change to other sports, Mount Evergreen was no exception. As a not-for-profit organization, we're wholly dependent on our members who volunteer their time and their efforts to maintaining the availability of a ski facility in the Kenora area and indeed try to improve it. This includes putting in many long hours, trying to make snow so that season won't be lost, and so we can start early. If we don't start by Christmas, we aren't making any money to pay off our loans and debts and pay our employees. And I think of names like yours, Bruce, who's out there 24/7 trying to make snow, and I think of some of the others. You can think of some of those names, like from years gone by.
Oh, Wayne England, Mike Rushton, Al Smith, the Keith Nelson, the Norton brothers. You see them in Safeway there. There are so many people that have been involved just in the time that I've been there in the last 45 years.
The
or
Fred's
so.
Rowbacks.
Fred is the ultimate volunteer.
There you go. And I like to think of families in years gone by that have contributed so much to skiing in the Kenora area. And I think of people like the Delameres, as you mentioned earlier, the Zrums, the McTaggarts. I mean, there are a lot of families in this room today. There are some of the Cameron family that have spent a lot of time at the Hill. I'm sure that there are a number of you that I've forgotten here today, and we could go on and on talking about families and people that have been affected by skiing at Mount Evergreen, where it's been part of their life.
And we've been striving to give the community the best in a winter sports facility. We can hope for a better future because we've always have hopes and plans for the future. But it takes a community to raise a child, and we believe that's exactly what we're doing by raising generations of cross-country and downhill skiers.
And volunteers.
And volunteers.
You know, really, this is Mount Evergreen today. A family, a community.
Continuing the legacy.
Woohoo!